19 days after finishing 39 seconds off the pace on his MotoGP debut, Toprak Razgatlioglu walked into Brazil practice and went third fastest. He was third, behind Zarco, behind Marquez, ahead of everyone else. And the most unsettling part is not that he went third. It is how it happened, because the conditions that produced it were the exact conditions designed to expose him. Practice at the Autodromo. Ayrton Senna was chaos before it even started. Heavy rain had flooded parts of the circuit overnight. The morning session was delayed. A new track that nobody had any data for became even more unknown. Grip levels nobody could model. Surface conditions that no simulator had ever possessed. Rubber that had never seen a MotoGP tyre in anger before this weekend. Turn 4 alone ended the days of Brad Binder, Jack Miller, and home hero Diogo Moreira inside the opening 10 minutes of the afternoon session. This was the kind of Friday where experience was supposed to matter most, where the riders who have spent years reading edge-of-limit conditions in the Premier class were supposed to pull clear of the field. And then Toprak Razgatlioglu, in his second MotoGP weekend, on a machine he has been racing for exactly 3 weeks, went third fastest, ahead of Pedro Acosta, ahead of Jorge Martin, ahead of Fabio Quartararo, ahead of Francesco Bagnaia. Only Zarco and Marc Marquez, two riders whose entire careers have been built on reading the limit in mixed conditions, were faster. And direct entry into Q2, his first in MotoGP, was already secured before the rain returned to end the session entirely. Before we go any further, if you enjoy real MotoGP analysis, the stories that matter before anyone else is talking about them, subscribe. Now back to what Toprak said when he returned to the pits, and why every word of it matters, because the manner in which he described it told its own story. When I returned to the pits after setting my time, I saw that I was in the top 3, and I was surprised myself. But I smiled. Not the reaction of a rider who expected this. Not manufactured confidence for the cameras. Genuine surprise. From a man who spent Thailand managing a machine he could not yet trust, now finding himself on a Friday evening in Brazil reading conditions that the paddock's most experienced riders were getting wrong. I didn't celebrate wildly, he added, because I'm focused only on tomorrow. Today is just Friday. And then the line that carries the most weight. To be in Q2 is an incredible feeling. He pointed specifically to the conditions that unlocked his pace. I think we made a big difference in these conditions, wet and dry, when we are always strong. 8 years in World Speed K, 3 titles, all of them won on circuits where mixed conditions and tyre feel separated the good from the great. At Jerez, at Portimao, at Donington, where the rubber cools on one side while the other burns, and where lap time comes from trusting a machine giving contradictory signals at the same time. The Jerez test 2 weeks ago, where he ran both Michelin and Pirelli rubber alongside Dovizioso, who was teaching him how to brake in a way that protects the rear tyre across a full stint, had given him something beyond setup sheets and telemetry. Reference points on the Michelin in partial grip conditions that a dry test in Sepang could never replicate. An understanding of how this Yamaha Vi4 behaves when the front cannot be fully trusted, when every tenth requires a decision made on instinct rather than memory. Those are precisely the conditions that defined Friday afternoon at Goiânia. And in those conditions, the gap between MotoGP and World SBK experience becomes much smaller than the paddock assumed. Do you think Toprak's Brazil performance is a genuine turning point? Or was this a wet conditions result that tells us nothing about his dry pace? Drop it in the comments. The wider impact of Friday is what the paddock cannot ignore. Bezzecchi, the Thailand race winner, the man Rossi called Aprilia's best hope against Marquez, ended practice 20th. He goes into Q1 on Saturday, while a rider on his second MotoGP weekend goes directly into Q2 for for a pole shootout that includes the reigning world champion. The irony is precise. The same conditions that reward Toprak's world SBK instincts for reading unpredictable rubber are the ones that punished Bezzecchi, who has built his style around a very particular kind of Aprilia grip that was not available on a drenched, unfamiliar surface. Rossi said this week that beating Marquez with a worse bike is impossible. He did not say anything about Bezzecchi needing to fear Toprak, because nobody thought that needed saying yet. At a new circuit where the data advantage was 0 for every team, Toprak did not just keep pace, he outperformed most of the field. Acosta, the championship leader. Martin, the 2024 world champion. Every factory Yamaha at a circuit where their machine finally had a chance to show what the V4 can do when braking zones are long and right-hand corners reward corner speed over outright power. The morning session had already offered a glimpse of what is building. Toprak had been tracking toward the top 6 before his team chose not to fit a new tyre at the end of the session. "I'm really sad about this," he said, "because it was the first time I saw the top 6, top 5. That reaction, frustration at a missed opportunity rather than relief at survival, is the reaction of a rider who no longer accepts that 2026 is purely about learning. And then, with that mix of honesty and quiet confidence that has defined every interview since he arrived in MotoGP, I'm quick, learning, but I think many riders are quick learning because all the MotoGP riders are very professional. Everyone learns quickly at a new track, but not everyone finishes third. Not everyone outpaces the championship leader, the reigning champion's teammate, and a former world champion in the process. The question the paddock is now asking is not whether Toprak has the talent to compete at this level. It is whether the 2026 season ends before he starts winning it, and whether the answer to that question arrives sooner than anyone planned. What do you think his ceiling actually is this season? A podium before the year ends, top 5 by mid-year, or is the gap to the front still too large when conditions are dry and the data advantage returns to the experienced riders? And which manufacturer do you think regrets most that Toprak is on a Yamaha and not their bike? If you enjoyed this breakdown, subscribe. There is a lot more of this coming. Leave your answers in the comments below.